So, Ryuma, the legendary swordsman of Wano. He's getting an adaptation of his one-shot Monsters, so I thought it'd be pretty cool to actually go over him scaling wise. Ryuma is very absent from the story, so a lot of his scaling in the actual manga is like betrayal based, which a lot of the community either discredits or just straight misunderstands. To remedy that a bit, I'm going to be going over Oda's original one-shot, Covenant Wanted. It actually predates One Piece, and it's one of his earlier works, so the art's a bit janky, but it has like a lot of statements about Ryuma that are useful. The canonicity of it is a bit shaky, as a young Oda himself even says that he created the one-shot on a whim just due to wanting a knight or a samurai character to slay a dragon in a cool double-page spread. But Oda has also actually said, in like more of the recent past, that the Ryuma that exists in Monsters is the same Ryuma that exists in One Piece. So I guess officially it is canon, but there's obviously going to be inconsistencies, such as Ryuma seemingly not having his famed sword Shusui, just due to it probably not being thought ahead of time. For this vid, I am going to be taking the most important parts of the one-shot, like the betrayal and the feats of Ryuma as a character, but I'll give other interpretations of him and how strong he is for the people that care about just the exclusive One Piece manga interpretation. So, like I said, we're going to be starting off with the original Monsters one-shot for scaling. A cool little similarity or reference, I guess, between Ryuma and his Shimosuke descendant Zoro is that they're both introduced with starvation being kind of like a theme to show off their willpower. Ryuma says in the beginning of the one-shot that he's been starved for 5 days straight, while Zoro says he hasn't eaten in 9 days. The only difference is that Zoro seems to think he can last up to like a month without eating food, but Ryuma calls Flare, the woman who fed him, his savior, which kind of implies that he would have died soon. Maybe East Blue Zoro could just last longer than his ancestor in a starvation contest, but anyway, past this cool little reference, Ryuma fights another swordsman in the bar who looks like a less cool, off-brand version of Mihawk. His name is Shirano, and due to Ryuma's own rules about if anybody taps his sheath, he has to duel them, they end up in a fight. Now, Shirano is actually hyped up by the cast to be a swordsman as great as the king himself. It's explained later in the story that the king is essentially just the one with the strongest warrior soul, and also he's known as the strongest man in the world. Ryuma also shows the capability to cut through a copper statue during his duel, which, if we hyper-analyze into, could mean Ryuma used the breath of all things in order to cut the copper. The next section of the story just pits Ryuma as an idiot that caused a dragon to come to the town where Flare lives. Now, dragons in the Monster one-shot are hyped up as creatures that are terrors that signify the destruction of locations. What's interesting about this is that Flare and the rest of the town seem to think that Shirano, despite his lore of being as great as the Great Swordsman King, or being second to the Great Swordsman King depending on the statement, would get bodied in a fight with one of these dragons in a one-on-one. Meaning their hypothetical idea of the Great Swordsman King would also probably lose to a dragon in a one-on-one. Shirano is eventually revealed to be evil, a thief, and the murderer of Flare's father, and is robbing the town after their evacuation due to the dragon attack. Ryuma then engages Shirano in an almost sort of round 2 to their prior duel, which ended without a victor. Ryuma then blitzes and one-shots Shirano casually, causing his death. Despite his deceitful nature and all of his thievery, Shirano actually was a highly skilled swordsman, which does make sense as this world seems to have swordsman skill rankings, Shirano being a first-class swordsman. Ryuma then goes on to meet the flying terror summoned by the Dragon Horn, an actual dragon, and defeats it in one attack despite all of their known lore. At the end of the one-shot, it is actually revealed that Ryuma is actually known as Ryuma the King, meaning Ryuma possesses the strongest warrior soul, and he does actually hold the reputation of being the strongest in the world, which, if true, makes Ryuma the strongest character of his time. Moving on to the actual story, Ryuma makes his first real appearance in the story as a zombie general under Moria's command. Something interesting to mention before the actual scaling of zombie Ryuma is that he's famous in the world as a dragon slayer, which at this point in the world are known as mythological creatures. Fame in One Piece is usually directly attached to betrayal, as these characters are usually famous due to their strength, so both Nami and Zoro being aware of Ryuma, despite him being dead for centuries, is quite impressive. Zombie Ryuma actually was able to defeat Brook so badly in a duel 5 years ago that he was forced to beg for his life. Then, even after 5 years of additional training, Brook still gets bodied by a suppressed zombie Ryuma, which Brook himself later admits. Two sword style Zoro ends up fighting Ryuma and is shown to have the same type of swordsmanship as him, with both having the same kind of power, leading them to having equal destructive capability. I plan to make a swordsmanship video in the future, where I talk about Goken, or the Mighty Blade, and Juken, the Gentle Blade, but it seems that Frankie's just referencing the fact that they both seem to be like more Mighty Blades type of swordsmen, as opposed to more Gentle Blade type of swordsmen. The fight lasts about 5 minutes, and it ends with Zoro defeating zombie Ryuma with a flying dragon blaze. Zoro actually mentions that he wishes he could have seen Ryuma in his prime, the obvious implication being Ryuma in his zombie form is weaker than he was when he was alive. I know some people think that Ryuma was like how strong Ryuma actually was, but it is implied that Ryuma was much stronger than that. Zombie warriors are stated by Brook to retain the battle abilities of their shadow, with the physical body deciding the output. In Zombie Ryuma's Vivre card, it is stated not only is the swordsmanship he engaged Zoro with very different from what he was capable of in life, but then he showed a physical ability far surpassing the owner of the shadow. It also ends with saying the zombie showed a glimpse of the power of the undefeated great swordsman. All of this goes to show that Zombie Ryuma is just not a clear representation of what a prime alive Ryuma, who was said to be an undefeated great swordsman, would actually look like. Ryuma being an undefeated swordsman is actually something Oda seems to be pretty consistent with. Oda in the SPS has even said that Ryuma died of an illness, so he wasn't defeated in battle when he died. Before we talk about Wano stuff, I want to cover Ryuma's famed sword Shusui. It's introduced as one of the 21 excellent grade swords and as a legendary sword. Zoro sees it and immediately wants it from the zombie Ryuma, likely due to him being introduced to Black Blades through Mihawk's Yoru, and knowing that Mihawk has one, they're probably incredibly powerful. While fighting Ors, he says one of the characteristics of a Black Blade is its hardness, which is one of the only things we actually know about Black Blades. Shusui seems to be heavier than Zoro's other swords up to that point, so much so that he deflects Ors' fists and launches a 108-pound phoenix that is stronger than his previous ones. The only other things we really know about Shusui is that it was forged through Ryuma's battles, and it's likely done through haki, but it's implied to be even deeper than that based on Road to Laugh Tale, but I guess we'll see that in the future. Overall, it being a Black Blade makes it one of the best swords in the story behind Mihawk's Yoru, which is the strongest Black Blade in the story. The last real instance of Ryuma we hear about in the story is Wano, which is mainly just statements and betrayal as Ryuma is dead. Due to Zoro having Shusui upon entering Wano, we get to hear about him from Onimaru, who is a companion of Ushimaru Shimotsuki. Onimaru says that Ryuma was a great and undefeated swordsman who cut down any challengers in an instant, similar to what he did to Shirano in their second duel within the one-shot. This being one of the reasons why Shusui has so much value. He goes on to say that Wano used to be known as the land of gold in the past, which made it very enticing for pirates and the world government alike. Ryuma stood alone against all outsiders who lusted after Wano, and essentially just bodied everybody so hard that even in the current day, Wano is still living off what is essentially Ryuma tax, which does keep it safe from the government as an isolated country. The only other samurai the world has really seen since Ryuma is Kozuki Oden, so it makes sense to why the world would fear samurai as a whole. Remember how I was hyping up Ryuma for Zoro and Nami recognizing his Dragon Saying legend? Well, Onimaru says that this is just one of his many legends as a swordsman, so much so that Ryuma is a national treasure and remembered as the god of the blade. Needless to say, this is probably the best portrayal a character can get in a story like One Piece, but there's one more statement I want to go over for Ryuma within Wano. After Luffy defeats Kaido and saves Wano, the people of Wano say Joy Boy is a hero only rivaled by the god of the blade, which is even more portrayal for Ryuma. You can even imply based on the portrayal he gets here next to Joy Boy that bare minimum he should at least be as strong as current Luffy, which is stronger than people like Kaido, or at the very least on his level. Despite everything Oden did and accomplished in his life, the people of Wano still put Ryuma on a higher pedestal than Oden, so much so that they don't want Shisui leaving Wano, but they're okay with Oden's swords leaving Wano, or them just like praising Ryuma as the god of the blade, but Oden never really gets that same portrayal. This all kind of just supports the whole stronger than Luffy and Kaido stuff I said before. If you're curious about Oden, you can watch my Oden video where I scale him and I give all my thoughts on him. But just to keep it simple, let's just say he's on Kaido's level. Ryuma seems to be a legendary character from the past, alike to Joy Boy, based on how he's revered and described. Ryuma essentially just told the world that samurai are busted, which is still believed to this day to the point where Akainu is hesitating to send Kizaru after Big Mom or Kaido and Wano just based on the samurai there. The only people who really entered Wano were people who happened to land there, such as Whitebeard, or the people like Moria and Luffy who came to challenge Kaido. And people like young Moria and Luffy seem to be more ambitious and they don't really care about dangers or things of the sort. This is more just an assumption, but I think it's clear based on how he's talked about and characterized that he's a Conqueror's Haki user, and he's even more likely to have the advanced application. This is without the one-shot where he's said to have the strongest warrior soul and is the strongest man in the world. The man with the strongest warrior soul sounds like a Conqueror's Haki user to me. Another thing, which I do expect from this new anime, is that Ryuma will have Conqueror's Lightning on his swords when he defeats the dragon, due to having the title of the anime being 103 Mercies Dragon Damnation, and that being Zoro's final advanced Conqueror's attack against King. The attacks even look similar in their respective panels within the One Shot and the One Piece manga, so I expect to be a connection there or like some sort of reference. So overall, Ryuma could unironically just be like the strongest character in the manga, except for people like maybe Emu and their original Joy Boy, because I expect them to be like the strongest characters in the manga, apart from people like Luffy. So I myself actually have Ryuma very high, but I would say bare minimum he's like over Kaido. But if you're less skeptical, he's probably just like top 3 strongest characters of all time. But yeah, so with that out the way, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.